Hey peeps, this is Ferny, your resident psychic medium and spiritual teacher, and you're listening to Ferny Unfiltered, where we dive into topics that enlighten, inform, and entertain the soul. On today's episode, we are discussing how everyone is channeling something one way or another. So stick around because you won't want to miss the topic of our podcast today. So everyone is channeling something, right? Everyone is always channeling something. For those of you who don't know what channeling is, it's basically you channeling or allowing yourself to be used as a vessel for knowledge, information, emotion, energy. And we all are channelers, period. Doing this work, doing the work that I've done for as long as I have, for me, it's easier to align with the energy of channeling higher spirit or individuals who passed away. It's easier for me to channel information from the ethers or from that higher spiritual plane. That's my form of channeling. But everybody is a channel in some way or another. You have artists who channel, they get their inspiration from somewhere, right? And you get people who are inventors, and they get their inspiration from somewhere. I believe that we all are channels and that we are like computers, and every computer is designed to perform a function. I'm designed to perform the function of channeling spiritual information, energy, higher awareness, etc. Some people are designed to function as a channel for technological information or for data that helps people to build or to design new devices, new technologies, etc. Some people who are artists, they are designed to channel forms of expression through their art. So they have abstract ideas that come through. Sometimes they have a certain vibe or certain sense of what it is that they're trying to create. So everybody is a channel, but most people are not in tune or tapped into that ability. And I really want to address that in this podcast episode because really aligning with that energy, aligning with that source, let's call it source. Everybody is plugged into source. You can call source God, you can call it the higher self, you can call it your soul, but let's just call it source. Source is that where everything comes from, where everything goes back to. So when I plug into source, I'm channeling spirit, I'm channeling higher knowledge. And everybody can plug into source, but not everybody knows how to. And not everybody knows that they can and are able to plug into source that way and channel higher knowledge. Here's an example of how this works for me, right? So let's say I'm sitting down with a client and they want to connect to their loved one who's departed, who's passed away. My job is to get myself out of the way. And what I mean by that is essentially my personality, Ferny, my own fears, my own anxieties, my own worries, my own whatever, kind of make peace with it not being the dominant focus, the dominant thing that we are trying to plug into. It's not about me. It's about the spirit that's going to come through. So I basically make peace with myself by giving myself the person. There's different angles of me. There's different aspects of me, right? It's like a layered onion. But I give myself permission to forget about myself for a moment, and I allow myself to kind of hand myself over to the spirit, and I let them use my body, my mind, my emotions, my memories. And so they have access to all those things, and they can use it to communicate their messages to those here in physical form. So in the moment that I'm plugging into the source and I'm plugging into them, I'm stepping aside, in essence, still aware, I'm still present, but I'm stepping aside and they're stepping in and beginning to affect or engage my own physical systems. And that's usually how spirit communication works, for me at least. But I've studied mediumship for a long time, and I've seen it happen with other people as well, where they're just literally stepping aside and letting somebody else use them in some way or another. And there are different types of mediums. There's like evidential medium, there's trance mediumship, there's all these different versions of mediums. But I think it really comes down to the level of how much permission you're giving over, or how much you're allowing to come through to you. Some people might struggle a little bit with this because they like to be in control. They like to kind of dominate, and want to not feel like they're being controlled or ruled by somebody else. I am actually, I had the same issue. I had the same struggle where I was a control freak, and it was hard for me to let go because I was always afraid of what was going to happen. I was afraid of who was going to embody my energy or my spirit. So it was a bit of a process for me, per se. So some people who are like artists, they give themselves over to the process, or the creative process. Prince was someone who was well known for this. He used to, even though he had some really incredible music, he was also a very well known writer. I mean, a lot of the songs that we know about that became popular, especially in the 90s and 2000s, etc., he wrote. So he gave himself over to that process, and he would channel music, he would channel information. And I believe that all channeled knowledge, all channeled information comes from source. You're plugging into that source material for everything, and you're pulling out what you're designed to make sense of, what your computer, what yourself, your person is designed to make sense of. There's same thing with Lady Gaga. I saw the documentary about Lady Gaga I think it was last year sometime. And she goes through these really rough periods where, one day she'll be very engaging with people. She's very social. The next day she's really struggling internally or mentally. She'll be smoking or vaping THC, trying to kind of alter her state of mind. But it gets her, she talks about how she has to go to a dark place to have new inspiration for music. Because in order for her to really connect with the music, she has to allow herself to go to a place energetically that doesn't necessarily resonate with her resting state of being. I totally get that, because I do the same thing when I'm channeling spirit. Sometimes the spirit's personality was nothing like my own personality. Sometimes they're extremely difficult to deal with. Sometimes they have more of an aggressive demeanor, or sometimes they are more expressive in a way that I'm not. So sometimes I have to allow myself to go to darker places just to share the vibe or the personality of the spirit. And it's never my intention to hurt anybody here with that information, but I want to do that person justice. I want to give them the true opportunity to embody me, and that way they can use me and express themselves through me. And that has required me making peace and kind of coming to terms with control, and how I just have to give up control and trust that that I am safe and that I'm okay. And it's a faith thing for me. So my first real experience, I think, having a channeling, a really like intense channeling experience. And we're going to talk more about like what you can do to kind of tap in and tune into your own source, because everybody has something they can tap into. Everybody's designed to channel something. And I believe that, most of us will have experiences, where we're channeling and we don't even realize that we're channeling, because it happens in just random moments throughout the day, or it happens in random moments in someone's life, and they don't realize that they're like plugging in and really revealing or expressing what is it that they are tuning into. I actually think that precognition, which is when you know something, you just know, you don't know how you know, but there's like a more intense form of it where, and I've experienced this in my own development and also in my own psychic life, where I just am going about my day doing whatever, and then somehow it's almost like I'm taking over for a moment and I express something, whether it's something that's coming up, something's going to happen, some form of energy. I just express something. So it's not like I even am aware that I'm doing it. I just plug in and all of a sudden I'm expressing. And I'm sure you all have had some experience where you're spending time with family or friends, or you're around other people, and you just like express something, or you share something without even thinking about it first. It just kind of blurts out. You get like my diarrhea of the mouth in essence, and then it just comes out, and then it turns out to be something that's true, or something that is that others are aware of, or something that comes to pass. So we're all channeling something. But my first real experience kind of being taken over. And I would call it that. It's not even taken over because I gave permission for this to happen. But it was a pretty intense experience for me. It was kind of scary because I didn't realize what was happening in the moment. But I remember, and this was back when I was in high school. It was towards the end of my high school year, so I think this was either when I was a junior or a senior. And I was doing a lot of meditating. I was really trying to tap in and tune in and connect with the source, with the universal mind, with God. And I really wanted to answer a lot of things because I had so many questions during that period of my life, and I didn't know how to answer those questions. So I'll tell you about it when we come back. So we'll be back in just a moment. So back to my story. I was meditating quite a bit, and I was trying to tap in and tune into source energy. So I would go to school, come home, and then any free time I had, I was just sitting in this lounge chair and I was just meditating. And I was just being present in the moment, focusing on my breath, focusing on just zoning into that space between all thoughts, that space between all emotions, and the space that's quiet, that isn't your chatterbox mind. Your mind is always thinking about stuff. It's thinking about problems and issues. I was focused on the space between that. So I spent a lot of time meditating. And on one particular night, I had spent, I think it was 4 hours that day meditating straight, like 4 hours straight. So I had been meditating for 4 hours. I know that's a long time. But I was very much in it. And when you get into that place mentally, when you're meditating, it's nice. You're not worried about anything. You're not thinking about your problems, your issues. You're not thinking about what's wrong in the world. You're not thinking about anything. You're just present. You're just there, but you don't even feel connected to your own physical body. Like you almost feel like you're in the middle somewhere. And I had meditated for 4 hours. I came out of meditation. It was time to go to bed because I had to wake up the next day to go to school. And I remember saying a prayer. I prayed right before I went to bed, and I said, God, I'm really working hard to connect and to understand and to be a vessel of sorts. Can you show me what my true capabilities are? Can you show me what's the highest level I can reach? Can you give me a glimpse or an idea of what I'm capable of? Because I want to know. I want to know. And I was really insistent. I was very just from the heart. I was praying from the heart. I wasn't going through like a traditional Catholic prayer where you're saying your Hail Marys and your Our Fathers. This is more of a speaking from the heart. So I asked God, show me what I can do. Show me what I can do because I want to know what I'm working towards. And I went to sleep. And back then I lived in this 1-bedroom apartment with my mom. And she slept in the bedroom. I slept in the living room on a mattress on the floor. Of course, we had a TV and a VCR in the living room, and so I just went to sleep. I got in bed and started going to sleep, and as I remember having several different dreams that night. One dream, which I didn't understand at the time, was about belts and how I was wearing a belt and then I was tightening it and then I was loosening it up. So I didn't even know the significance of that dream. I do now, but in context to the rest of the dream, which it'll make sense once we talk about it. But I didn't know what that was about. But so my dreams were just they were in sequence. I had one dream and then it jumped over to another situation dream and then another situation. So I was having multiple dreams in one night. Well, it got to one point where I was having that particular dream about wearing belts and loosening up the belt and tightening it. And I think I was loosening up the belt in the dream. And then all of a sudden, and when I was asleep, I was sleeping on my stomach. So I was kind of with my hands in front of me. I was staring directly or facing the direction of the TV right there in front. It wasn't a big room, but I was facing the TV and I was sleeping on my stomach. I immediately felt this crazy, and it was so intense. It felt like someone had taken a bucket of ice cold water, and they had dumped it across my entire backside. And it was such a shock, like if you jump into a really cold pool or you get in the shower and it's really cold water, it just kind of shocks you. That's what it felt like. It felt like a shock to my system. And I was just like immediately reacted because it was so cold and so intense. But once I felt the sensations, I just took a huge deep breath and I was like, and I like, as I took a deep breath, I opened my eyes and I woke up, because it was such an intense feeling. And as I woke up, my arms, like they were right in front of me. I like pushed myself upwards, and I was kind of doing the position that you see in yoga where you're doing like an upward facing dog. So I was kind of like stretching upwards with my arms or my hands down, and I was looking up, and I was like just completely caught off guard by the sensations, and I reacted this way, and I took a deep breath. And when my eyes opened, I saw the television in front of me. I also saw the VCR in front of me. And as soon as I saw that, then it almost felt like there was a flash in front of my eyes, and my eyes were no longer looking at the television or the VCR, and I was no longer in the room that I was sleeping in. I was in another room, another place, another house. And it almost reminded me, it reminded me of the layout of my Aunt Melba's house, because I used to spend quite a bit of time going over to her house. So it kind of reminded me of the layout of her house. But I also I had a house in Houston that had a very similar layout as well. So it either could go. But it reminded me of the layout. And so I was there in kind of in the middle of a walkway. I was on the floor, and I was like kind of I was in the opposite position, so I was like kind of on my backside, but my I was kind of angled up because it felt like something was holding me up from underneath my arms, my underarms, like my armpits. So there was like hands or something underneath there, and it was holding me up. So I wasn't necessarily completely flat up against the ground or the floor. It was wood floor. I was kind of like just being like in that position. I was facing forward towards my feet, and something was holding me underneath my arms. And I was dressed in like a plaid shirt, which is funny because I didn't wear plaid at the time, but I was wearing this plaid shirt. It almost looked red. And I also had these like jeans, or these blue jeans, or like jeans on, which at the time that I was dreaming about this is not the way I dress. I never wore jeans like that. And it kind of had a country or a more Midwestern look as far as the attire or the outfit. But it wasn't me. I didn't feel like it was me. It felt like it was another person, or like I was in someone else's body. That's what it felt like. But it wasn't what I would wear at the time. And I was being held by something underneath my underarms, and I was being pulled backwards. And my head was facing forward, looking at my body, and my eyes were open, but I couldn't really control like my body. I had no mobility or function of my body. So as soon as I realized that I was in this space and this was happening, I began to panic because I didn't know what was going on. This had all happened so fast, and I didn't really know how to react. It's not like you're prepared to react a certain way. So I was kind of just caught off guard and in complete shock, and I was being dragged backwards. And I freaked out because I thought, oh my God, am I in somebody else's body? Am I going to be killed? Is something going to happen to me because I'm being dragged backwards? And I couldn't see who was behind me or who was dragging me. I could only see the direction that my head or my eyes were facing. So it freaked me out, and I panicked, and I immediately started to try to shake my body or get control of my body, or even blink my eyes, and I couldn't do it. And I was trying really hard because I was trying to get control, and I was trying to avoid having an experience that I wasn't going to be able to control. In other words, being paralyzed and not being able to stop something or someone from hurting me. So I started freaking out, and I started panicking. And I tried to shake my head, and nothing happened. And then I tried to shake my head again, and nothing happened. And I was like, oh my God, I'm dreaming. I gotta snap out of this. I gotta snap out of this. And so then on my third try, I actually spoke to God, and I said, oh my God, like I'm not ready for this. This is too much. I can't handle this right now. I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for this. And when I said, please, like, snap me out of it, snap me out of it. And I'm thinking this in my mind. It's not like I'm saying this because I have no control over the vocal of the body, but I tried to shake my head a third time. And once I was thinking that, and then I shook my head a third time, at that moment, my eyes flashed again, and I was back in my body, and I was back in the living room on the mattress on the floor, and my eyes flashed, and I was looking at the VCR and the TV right in front of me, and my arms were still, in front of me, and I was in that position, that like upward facing dog position. And so all that happened, and as soon as I snapped back or flashed back into my body, like immediately I was like, what the hell just happened? And as I'm trying to grasp the situation, as I'm trying to like figure out what just happened again, that sensation of like cold ice water that had slammed across my entire back, it almost went in reverse. So it almost like reversed itself or backed up or went back out of my body. And then all I felt in my body was just like surge of energy, like a bunch of like, it's almost like when your leg falls asleep or your hand falls asleep, you feel those little tingles, like there's electrical like circuits or electrical sensations through your body. It felt like that, except no pain. There was no discomfort or no pain. It was just like surge of energy. And I was completely just caught off guard. And I was like, oh my God. And I took another deep breath, and I was like, I took a deep breath when it happened, when it started, and then I took this other deep breath when it did it, in reverse, and I felt the opposite. And then I was back in my body. I was back on the mattress. I was back in the room, and everything was back to normal. And as I as I was there in that position for a few moments, trying to figure out what just happened, trying to gauge like the magnitude of what experience this was, then I started to get comfortable again. But that sensation of feeling all that electrical current in my body was intense, and it was nothing I'd ever felt before. So I was freaked out. I was completely in shock. I was so scared because I was like, what the hell did I just do? Like, what happened to me? And I knew it was my fault because I asked God to show me the capacity or what I was capable of. And then when I had that experience, it was pretty obvious, right? I didn't know what this was at the time. I never realized it in the moment what was going on. But I was freaked out. I was scared. And so I turned on the lights. I laid in my bed on the bed, and I was just kind of there, trying to take deep breaths and trying to get back to a state of normalcy. And I slept with the lights on for the rest of the night, and it took me a while to get back to sleep because I was so scared that this was going to happen again. So that was the most intense, extreme experience I had ever had in regards to channeling, in regards to being occupied or taking in energy that was not mine, that was not me, and as Ferny, as Fernando. So I'm going to tell you what I think was going on, and I'm going to tell you what I feel and what I'm becoming aware of, what I think was going on, and I'll tell you about that in just a moment. So I did have this amazing experience, and I was inhabited by an energy that was much more powerful than myself. It didn't feel evil. It didn't feel bad. The only negative, the negative feelings that I had weren't even about the energy or about the experience itself. It was about like what was happening and being caught off guard and being in shock and not having control of my body. Those were my fears. That's where the negativity, the negative feelings were coming from. So it wasn't necessarily like the energy surge in my body. It wasn't like about what was going, like what had taken me over. I didn't feel any fear around that at all. It was more about just the experience of it, just like what was happening. I was taken over, and I had no control, and that was where my fears were coming from. I believe that that was a pretty early experience that the universe, source, God was giving me, showing me what I would be doing down the road, which is channeling. And I'm already a channeler. I mean, I've been channeling for years, but channeling something more than just spirit, channeling something that's just on a completely different level, on a completely different spectrum than what I currently channel regularly for my clients. I believe that God or the universe was showing me a glimpse of how this process would be for me, and how at some point in my development, I'm going to reach a period where I am going to give up complete control of my faculties, and something will inhabit me and speak and communicate through me, but it won't be me. It will be me being used and me giving myself permission to be used in this way. So I believe that that's what was going on. The universe is just trying to give me, hey, heads up, this is where you're going to be at down the road. So you might want to make peace with the idea of giving up control. You might want to make peace with this type of a shift in your consciousness and your awareness, because it's going to feel intense, and it's not going to be something that's going to be easy, being the kind of person that I was. So I believe this is what this was. The universe was trying to give me a, hey, heads up, you're going to be channeling in this form, in this way, and it's going to be intense, and you're not going to be fully present for it. So just be prepared, because it's going to be a lot, and it's not going to be an easy transition for you. So that's what I think it was. But I think we all channel information every day. Like, I think most of us don't even realize that you might be making dinner, and then you just have this random thought that pops in your head, or random feeling or sense of something, and you blurt it out or you share it. You might be driving down the street, and you feel this sudden urge to just pull right instead of going left, which is where you normally go. So you just automatically, you act automatically. You don't think about it. You just follow your desire. It's not even a desire, because it's almost like a download. You just literally get instructed to do something different, and then you do it. I believe that's what people do. They channel all the time. And for you, if you're wanting to connect more, because you can benefit from this, being connected to, more to source can help you in your life. It can help you with your passion. It can help you with your career. There are people who are amazing doctors, and they channel higher knowledge and communication from other doctors who maybe have lived a life, and they're sharing their expertise or their understanding about something that the physician here in the physical world is going through. So those moments of inspiration, or those moments of skill that you embody, that you may not always have, those are moments of channeling. When you're writing something down on a piece of paper and it just feels so disconnected and different from what you normally write or how you normally write, that's channeling. That's you sharing and connecting to something beyond yourself, and sharing it in a way that is not your norm. And it comes down to capacity. Everybody has a theme that they can channel. There's artists, they can channel music, they can channel, arts, depends on the media, films, documentaries, movies, care for other people, writing, etc. Those are all forms of channeling. And it's not always going to come from you. It comes from something beyond. You're just tapping in and you're tuning in. So there are a few ways that I would recommend that you can do this if you really want to have your own more intense, more connected forms of channeling. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to have the experience that I had. Not everybody's going to have that, because that's very unique and specific to me. Everybody's experience will be different. And the amount of channeling you do is based on how much control you're giving up, how much you're allowing something else to embody you. Now, I will say that you will want to be very specific and careful with what you're allowing into your body, what you're allowing into your mind, into your heart, because you have a lot of younger people who are just wanting to have a supernatural experience, and they are connecting themselves to lower vibrational energy, which we would recognize as like demonic energy or evil energy. I don't really like to call it that, because it's just lower vibrational energy. We all possess that. We all can tap into that, but it's lower vibrational energy. So some of these younger folks, or some of these people who are desperate to have an experience, they are opening the door, and they're making themselves very available to lower level energy. And then they start to have lower level energy experiences where they are embodying and taking in energy that isn't in their best interest, that isn't in their favor. This is where you start to get into the realm of like where people are possessed and everything like that. And people are always afraid, because they feel that possession, or that you're like possessed by a demon, that you were forced to. Like, it's not something that you chose. That's not true. Everything within your person, everything that you experience on that level, is a choice. So some of these people who are having these crazy supernatural experiences, on some level, they chose to allow this to happen, because you can't be your body, your systems is unique and is designed for you, for your spirit, and your spirit's going to use it however it needs to. But if you're giving permission for something else to use it as well, then you have to be very careful with what you're giving permission to. I always try to come from a place of love, light, and higher vibrational energy. Even though sometimes when I am channeling a spirit, the personality is a little darker or they had some issues going on, but that doesn't mean that it's evil or that they're, evil energies. It just means that they were human and they made mistakes and they have a lot of regrets, or they want to talk about this or that, or they just were personalities that that operated in a very unique way. But it's not like they're evil. I'm very intentional that whatever I do, whatever I'm channeling, whatever I'm bringing through, should have some sort of healing effect for myself, for the people involved, for the world. So my intention is to connect with anything that will help everybody else, not just something that's going to validate that I can do something special or I can do this magical thing or whatever. So if you're going to channel something, make sure you're intentional in what you're wanting to channel. If you want to channel higher art forms, do that. If you want to channel written word or knowledge, do that. If you want to channel healing energy and be a better healer, then do that. You can do it, but you have to be intentional in it. And also, when you're going to channel, you're going to have to give up control to some extent. So you got to be clear on how much control you're going to give up, or how willing you are to be a participant and to be used for the purposes of channeling knowledge and information. So some of the signs that you are going to be channeling, or some of the ways that you can channel, is by first realizing that you're going to have altered states of awareness. This sometimes is intentional and sometimes it's unintentional. For me, that shift from meditation, that was a huge catalyst for me going into that mode, because as I lined up with an altered state of awareness, I gave myself permission to experience myself in a different way, to experience life, to see and experience things through a very different perspective. So that allowed me to shift my perspective, to shift my awareness. Sometimes I'll be sitting down and watching TV, and this used to happen a lot more back in those days. It doesn't happen as much now, but back in those days, I would be watching TV and I felt like I was moving sideways. Like I was stationary. I was still just sitting there watching TV, but I would get so fixated on what was on the TV that I started to feel like my spirit was stepping out of my body and was sliding sideways. And it was just the weirdest sensation, because it feels like you're literally sliding sideways and you're sliding out of your body. But that's one indicator that you might be lining up with higher energy, or that you might be stepping into a mode where you're going to be more open, receptive, and possibly even channeling. So that's one indicator. Some people, they try to initiate channeling through the use of drugs or altering or substances that can alter their perceptions. You got to be really careful about that and be real selective, because yes, it can have an effect on you, and you can reach a better state of channeling by utilizing certain types of psychoactive ingredients. Some people, just by smoking pot or using THC, they are able to use that to shift their perspective enough. Some people are just addicted to it. That's a different story than using it for the purpose of spiritual evolution. You've got people who go to Peru or go to South America. There's people in the US that do it as well, but they use ayahuasca because it helps them to step into that altered state and start to see and feel and experience things from a very different perspective. And you begin to, you don't have full control of your faculties. So you're having an experience mentally, but then you're also being inhabited, or you're also allowing yourself to be used in a certain way as well. So there's a permission there that's given. But ayahuasca is another way that people do that as well. There are other, people use mushrooms sometimes because mushrooms help. It just depends on the individual. So if you're going to use drugs, you want to be careful, because some people, I think that's one of the reasons why I'm not as big on using drugs for myself. I've done THC, I've done CBD oil, I've done meditation, but I try to steer away from the heavier, more intense things, because I'm always fearful that I'm going to initiate, or I'm going to force my mind into a form of psychosis where I'm not able to get control of my mind, or I will begin to have schizophrenic episodes like my mom, because my mom is a schizophrenic. So I'm always worried that I'm going to push my brain beyond its ability to keep up with what I'm doing to shift my consciousness. So I try to stay and limit myself to kind of the easier, more known things that I can control the dosage and all that stuff. So I will steer away from the heavier hardcore stuff. That's not stuff I really want to take a risk in taking and then becoming crazy over, because I'm just not going to do that. But meditation is definitely a way to do it. So, and you don't even have to meditate for 4 hours like I was meditating. It takes time. I mean, I would say if you're going to meditate for hours and hours each day, you're probably going to have more experiences. That's what the Buddhist monks in Tibet, where they spend days in meditation, and they are able to initiate a lot of spiritual experiences because they meditate for so long and they're altering their consciousness. You're not going to meditate for days at a time. You probably won't even meditate for an hour, but I would recommend 5 or 10 minutes a day where you go into it with some very clear intentions that you want to open up to more of what you are capable of receiving, but in a way that is helpful for yourself or for the people in your life or people in the world. So just by sitting, focusing on your breath, and then just paying attention to the sounds around you, that in itself is a way to shift your consciousness. And you have to do it enough to have more experiences, because it's accumulative. It takes time to train your mind and to train your mental awareness to this other state. But you can do it just through that. Writing is another way that you can line up with it. Sometimes when I'm channeling Asha and I am having a conversation and I'm writing from Ferny's perspective, something switches, and then all of a sudden I'm channeling Asha and I'm communicating in that style, which is very different from my own like conversational self. When I talk, when I'm discussing something or I'm giving, there's a lot of me in it. There's a lot of Ferny ego that's in it. I'm fine with that, because it gives me a very clear understanding of what is me and then what is coming from a higher place. And I can see the difference in the way that it's being written and the way that it's being expressed verbally when I've done it a few times verbally. So for me, that's the clear difference there. But writing does help as well. So if like you ask a question from your current state of mind, and I would do this after like a 10 or 15 minute meditation period, but you ask a question and then you write the response back in just a way that you feel like you need to respond back. And it might feel like you're talking to yourself at first, but you're not. You might be, but as you get more used to it and as you get more comfortable with the process, you're going to give yourself more permission, and you'll start to notice that there's a shift that starts to happen at some point, and you'll start tapping into something that's much deeper or higher than yourself. You can also use physical activity. Sometimes people use yoga. Sometimes people use jogging or running. It just depends on the physical activity you use. But physical activity can help you to essentially like get the thinking mind, the chatterbox in your head, get it from being so vocal, get it from being so communicative. So you can use it in that way by if you tire the body, the mind just kind of wants to surrender. And when I used to meditate, I used to actually jog or go and do something physical first, and then I would meditate, because it was so much easier to step into a more relaxed state, because your body is tired. So you're not going to really be paying as much attention to your body. Your body just wants to rest. And because your body wants to rest, it's easier to relax it. So the mind has no choice but to kind of go there with it as well. Same thing. So I would recommend that as well. That's another way that you can kind of like step into that and start to connect with that form of altered state or altered awareness. But it takes practice. It takes time. It's not something that's going to happen like overnight. Some people might have an overnight experience, but many times it takes practice and it takes real intention to line up with channeling energy and to start to channel whatever it is you're going to channel. So thanks everybody for energetically tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, then like, share, and review my show on your podcast listening platform. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and check out my website at fernandomarron.com. That's FERNANDOMARRON.com for additional content, updates, articles, and more. Until next time, kiddos, and be sure to have yourselves a namaste.